You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Aingeal Rose and Ahonu.
You're very welcome back to part 4 of this 4-part series of our interview with 80-year-old Charles Scamahorn. And we started off in the first section talking about the atomic bomb, and then the second section was about how he refused to carry the bomb. And in the third section, we went through the follow-up to him refusing that and how it led to a growth of awareness in him. And Aingeal Rose, we've a very interesting section coming up now to conclude all of that, where we move from the past, where we were talking about all the issues around globalization, war, terrorism, dropping atomic bombs, growth of consciousness, and now we're coming into the kind of human future.
Right. Well, Charles has an interesting theory on the different stages of human development,
Yes.
all the way from infancy up to a sage and beyond. So he's going to talk to us today and about his basically how he views the state of the human up into an enlightened human. And this is interesting when we take into consideration his background, what he had to do, where he came from, and how he is now, a very spiritual, peaceful man.
Yes, indeed, yeah. And those stages of the human evolution that he talks about, it leads on to little bits of discussions about projecting onto others, as well as being part of that growth of awareness, as part of that evolution of the human, and judgment of others. So it's interesting how, coming from that background, it has evolved to a type of vision of the future human. And not all of it we agree with, but certainly it poses some questions for consideration, doesn't it?
It does. Yes, absolutely. And we all need to be very serious right now at this point, I think, about evolving the human species, because, I feel we're at this precipice that if we don't evolve and stop the judgment and stop the condemning and the killing and the hatred and the bigotry and all of that, we're going to be just repeating the past. It's just going to continue like this. So stay with us for Charles's final segment. With us. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
So Charles, what's the second development?
Yikes! These are. Let's just go on to and say my second development is human development, and okay, I've studied a lot of stuff, tried to figure out things, and I've developed a theory of human development, which on its first pass through seems so absolutely obvious that I'm not saying anything. Okay, it goes like this: infant, child, adolescent, adult, mature, sage, and wahoo.
Okay.
Wahoo.
Yeah. Actually, it's Aurora. I took the word Aurora, which is stuff in the sky, because I want to take something that had an outer space, infinite projection.
Right.
And what Aurora refers to is not a sage, but somebody who's gone beyond being a sage and has become a member of the whole universe, the old 10 to the 22nd star system of the universe.
Right.
And that's what its focus is.
So we're familiar with the first few of those stages, but now
I'm familiar with all of them.
You're familiar with all of them. And you're pushing the boundaries for the others, yeah.
But I may be pushing a boundary in a little bit different way than you are. I don't know. We'll see when we get there. But one of the things that becomes obvious is, say you've reached the level of adolescence, which most adults, as I see it, are kind of locked into it. And they do things like begin every sentence with I. Because the world's all about them and about them showing off. And I guess I do some of that too, quite a bit of the time maybe. But there are these other options you can do. Okay, now let's say you're doing affirmations. Oh, I'm great, I'm powerful, I can do anything I want, I'm strong, I'm going to conquer the world, things like that. Well, you can look in the mirror in the morning and do that and feel good about it. But for a typical person, then they walk away from those affirmations, and they hit a problem, as inevitably you will. Your life is filled with lots of problems, and they kind of go into a grump, and if problems are really bad, they get pushed all the way down into defeat. Okay, well, that happens to everybody some of the time. Okay, now what I'm aspiring to do in my cultural development that I can tell you to do is, when you're feeling really good and high like that, to start working in that same emotional high mood. And that's easy to do. Like, you can go wash your dishes and sing a happy song. Oh, you nice little dishes, nice and clean. Or you can go out and work on your garden and start watering your garden and pulling up weeds and say, oh, you little guys, you're so healthy and strong. But you notice you're projecting over onto them your feelings. And it's an adult thing, because then you are producing something of social value for something beyond yourself. For your family, for your wife, your children, yourself even. But it's producing something rather than just saying, I am strong, I am beautiful. Instead, you're saying, I'm making beautiful things that will last. I'm making beautiful things that I can share with you.
You're becoming a creator. And so
it's an adult. It's an adult thing to be doing. And that's why I call it adult.
Makes sense, yeah.
Okay.
It is true.
Now, here's another thing. Say you get into this adult thing, and things go bad. Even as adult, things will go bad. And maybe you drop a dish because it was soapy and it's broken. Well, as an adolescent, you would maybe start screaming and say, "Oh God, that's a piece of shit! Why did I do that?" Whereas, as an adult, you say, "Oh, this is broken. Where am I going to get the money to get another one?" You might think thoughts like that. Or if it was a really, really super valuable thing, it was the wedding gift that your grandmother gave to your parents when they were married, and it's irreplaceable, you might really go into a few moments of despair. Because here she is coming over for dinner tonight, and her plate has now been broken. What am I going to do? You could get really feeling bad about that, even as an adult. Okay, so what happens is, as you go into the funk, is you tend to retreat into a shrunken emotional state. And in that state, you tend to fall back into something you're familiar with when you fail. So as an adult, you fall back into your adolescent way of coping with bad things. And as an adolescent, you'd fall back into a childish temper tantrum way of coping with that.
Right.
So what I'm suggesting is, because you now know this process, is that, okay, you fall back in an adolescent thing, but you now know how to get into a positive frame of mind. You get up to your positive frame of mind, and from there you move over into your adult positive frame of mind.
Okay.
So there's a procedure that's pretty obvious and simple, and you don't have to, do something like, I know people they had a screaming room, and it was a padded cell essentially, and they would go into the screaming room. Yes, and they would scream bloody murder till their throat hurt, I guess. And then they would come out and they would have gotten it out. Now the problem with this is that it's practicing a more immature way of coping with your stress. And
it's
you're
like
getting
those
good at it.
where you go in and they give you a big, padded club, and you get to bonk each other.
Yeah, they used to do that. Well, the problem with it is you get practiced at that method of coping with your problem. And what I'm suggesting is a little more mature in that I'm offering you ways to get out of your difficult situation into a more positive one at a lower maturity level, but being up in the more emotionally healthy, you can move. When you're feeling really good is when you have your options of choosing what you want to do. When you're feeling really bad is when you're hunkered down like this and you have no options other than to grovel. So this offers you a technique for growing.
Okay.
But now the nice thing about the theory is I've just described it, which all seems so simple and obvious, is when you see how to go from adolescent to adult, because adolescent is already where you've got your mental faculties and the rest of that. When you're talking child, it's a little harder to talk about because you can't verbalize it as well. That's why I like to talk about it from the point of view of an adolescent, because from an adolescent you can talk about being adult. When you're an adult, you can talk about being mature. The problem with that is that most people are not well enough, firmly enough experienced with being adult that they can move into mature. And mature people are not experienced enough with being sages, like Jesus or Lao Tzu or Buddha or those guys. They don't have enough experience to move into that. Now, with this theory that I just given you, you can see how you cycle up. And pretty soon they are a sage. Well, so what do you do if you're a sage? You know, Lao Tzu.
In general, are there years attached to each of these stages? Like, can you safely say that the child is 1 to 7, or the adolescent is this age and the adult? And so at what stage do you move from maturity into the sage?
You know, the funny thing about that is we've probably all seen videos of kids that are like 6 years old that have cancer, and they go into one of these cancer hospitals, and you see these little kids just being so mature.
Right.
Have you seen videos
like
that?
I've seen those. Yeah.
I think it isn't totally age dependent. It has a lot to do with orientation, accepting the reality that you're faced with. Here I'm 6 years old. It's sure I'm not going to get to grow up and do all these adult things, but here I am. I'll be damned if I'm going to let it get me down. I'm going to enjoy myself here. I'm going to try and help my mom and dad be happy when they see me. I'm going to be a good example.
So these are sage qualities that you're talking about.
Well,
mature
I would call that mature.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it is true that, anybody at any age can cycle through various parts of themselves all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, weren't we listening to something the other day, Aingeal Rose, where somebody was talking about it necessary for all humans to go through the senile stage?
We were talking about physical immortality.
To go through the senile stage in order to effectively go back to that childhood, because senile in some ways is very, very close to the childishness and that kind of innocence.
Yeah.
So, but that you would come out the other side of that, bringing the child with you again.
Instead of dying.
Yes.
Right.
I have had to cope with that this last couple of weeks.
Explain.
Becoming senile or becoming a child again?
Becoming senile and a child again, kind of. Because I've been, for the last couple of years, going to improv groups and taking improv lessons. And I finally just really had to admit it, that I can't cope with the things you need to do to be successful at improv. And here's why. You have to remember maybe 5 things simultaneously. The improv people are always say, you don't need to do anything. You just walk in, blind.
Explain to us what is improv. What is that?
Improv is usually it's on stage. Doesn't have to be on stage, but where people are confronted with some kind of problem, and they work it out instantly,
spontaneously.
So it's improvisation on the spot.
Yes.
On the spot to fill up, and you'll be given a character. Like, instead of being an adult male, you're a 3-year-old Chinese girl.
Oh, I see. So you got to act. So it's acting out as well at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, and your name is Szechuan, and hers is Benjuan, and his is to be, and
you have to step into those characters.
You step into the character, and here's the problem: you have
like
to remember your character. You got to face the audience. You got to keep your hands out there doing something.
Yeah.
You should. I got to remember your name and your name and your name. What was it? Szechuan and Benjuan and doorknob. Well, anyway, the problem for an 81-year-old is that when I'm thinking about one thing, the other alternate things are not as readily available as they used to be, and it becomes a real problem.
Right.
Because I'm talking to Benjuan over here about Szechuan, and I forget your name. because I'm talking to her and doing all this stuff over here, and then oh yeah. Now,
You don't compute as quickly.
it isn't just as quickly. It's that short-term memory. It just isn't there, and I can still think fairly rationally as long as I'm staying focused on a given thing. But as soon as I got 5 or 10 things going on, and the other day it was kind of funny because I mentioned that I was having these memory problems, and our leader said, "Oh, I have trouble with memory too." And then she started talking. I said, "Well, what did these last 7 people say we were doing this little thing?" And she went down the thing and she remembered every one of them, what they had said, and how it all played together.
But is that because she was using some kind of memory triggers, memory exercises in order to...
Well,
Maybe
some of
she's
that.
used to it.
But she is used to it. She's done a lot of it. But there's something going on in your mind that allows you to have that kind of short-term memory that she had. I could, with effort, I could start remembering. And as she described it, I could remember it. But as far as me doing it, it just wasn't there.
I remember when I
just had to acknowledge that.
Right.
When I went to the School of Metaphysics years ago, one of the training exercises was that you had to remember every single event that happened within 3 days. In other words, if it was the third day, you had to start on the third day, remember backwards all the way to the second day to the first day, and every detail. And it was a practice that they had us do.
Yeah.
And that did, improve your memory. You just actually got skilled at, you kind of could recall events much faster the more you did that. So that was a valuable thing to do.
But that is in long-term memory. The things I'm talking about is instant memory.
Instant, yeah.
So do you see that as one of these stages that you're talking about, these stages of growth towards adolescent and adult and child maturity and sage and all of that? Is that one of them? Or is that a failing of being in one of them?
You were talking about becoming senile and moving through senility.
That's brain rot.
That's adult.
Brain rot.
That's still in the adult phase.
Right. That's
it can happen to anybody. You can have brain rot at any. Like a bullet goes through your head. You get brain rot.
Jeez.
That's a gross term, isn't it?
What,
brings up this visual, Charles.
Brain rot.
Yeah.
Well, have you seen some of these? Well,
no. That's okay.
Some videos, pictures.
And this move towards the sage qualities, or that enhanced final quality, what did you call it? Ahonu. Oahu.
Well, it's like Aurora.
Aurora,
but I misspell it and begin it with an O rather than an A.
Okay. So
it's intentionally misspelled that way.
Sure.
Aurora.
Is it within the realms of possibility for all humans to arrive at that point in the lifetime in general as we know it?
Let's limit all humans to at least average intelligence, average sociability, not having some major flaw, just a normal human being.
Let's go to
I think yes, the average person.
Let's go to a little bit of a description about the sage level and then the Aurora level.
Oh yeah.
If you could give us, because we kind of left with the adult.
Yes.
Well, the Aurora level is doubling back to the second thing I was going to talk about a while ago. It's computers run out to their limit.
Okay.
Now, we've only had computers around for 50 years, but already I can talk to this thing and it can answer me back. And if I ask the right questions, it will talk to me for a whole paragraph about what it is I asked. That's pretty astonishing.
It is, yeah.
That's kind of scary.
Well,
for me anyway.
It is for all of us, but it's happening, and as soon as we get to the point where the other aspects of reality, the CRISPR can take a cell and make a little cell and teach this little cell, and they've actually done this now already, to make a transistor. I think there was one component of a transistor that they were making. Okay, now we got this cute little amoeba, he can make a transistor. Uh-oh. well, what if this one
Yeah,
over here
right.
can make a resistor?
I already
And
feel
that one
replaced.
over there can make a CPU, and this one over here can. Well, it can't make any of those things. Oh, but it knows how to pull these all together. Okay. Well, that isn't that far off. I think it's this little transistor was just the beginning. It may turn out that, well, it seems almost inevitable that it can be done because life does it.
Yes.
We do it.
Now, did you detect the little resistance that Aingeal Rose showed there? And you too, when you're saying, wow, that's kind of scary. Just even to think about that for a second is scary.
Scary if it's used in the wrong way, but maybe exciting
You see, I'm
if it
just wondering.
enhances the capability of the human.
I'm just wondering.
I'll avoid words like brain rot.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I'm going with this, because I think in a way there's a possibility of us going full circle to the development of the atom bomb in a way, because it was from that same thinking that arose. Oh, what happens if we could do this, and what would happen if we could split the atom, and what could happen if so you're talking about more or less the same kind of inquiring mind.
It all comes down to the purpose.
Yeah, but is there a danger though that
Yeah.
that same technology that you're
Okay.
talking about could be used for malicious purpose?
Yes. Here's the way it happened. We had all these scientists here, and then somebody said, "Did you know that Heisenberg and those Germans are making an atomic bomb? The energy is there. We think it's there. If they do it and they get it first, we're all goners."
Right.
So we better hurry up.
So the
So
same
we-
thing with this sage mentality that you're talking about now, though, that we would use this brain capacity and this way of thinking and this technology to actually control others.
But I wouldn't call that a sage mentality. I mean, sage mentality to me means wiser, more
You're
advanced.
You're off camera.
Yeah, okay. Wiser and more advanced.
Yeah.
That's what a sage means to me. It doesn't mean somebody who would take that knowledge and destroy with it.
I
Yeah.
agree 100% on that.
Because you're talking about moving
But how
up
do
the
we-
evolutionary scale,
Right.
not down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I proposed in my little theory of human maturity there is a way of getting there. I think if everybody was up to a mature level, we'd be just fine.
Yeah, they were. They're not, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people are stuck in adolescence somewhere.
Or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, or childish. See a lot of childish behavior. And it isn't just in adolescence. You see a lot of people stuck in adolescent fear mode.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of...
Yeah, we're not even having a good time as adolescents.
Yeah.
None of us have really know how to play really still.
When you see somebody that is gotten into an inflexible frame of mind, this is the way it is, that's the way it is. Those are the enemies, those are the good guys,
Yeah.
all that. That's operating out of adolescent
Right.
And
fear mode.
religions
Absolutely.
do that with dogma too, saying this is the only belief system and ours is the right belief
Yeah.
system. And
And we'll kill you if you don't.
yeah.
If you don't want to be saved, we'll just murder you. Yeah.
So the big question now remains, does anybody have to do anything to grow into this kind of awareness that you're talking about, these levels of growth?
Yeah, you have to choose.
Well, I'm asking Charles from the point of view that, do you foresee that this kind of maturity is a school or a learning, or is it just a natural progression of the human condition?
I think it's a natural condition if you've given the opportunity.
Okay.
But most are not given the opportunity. Most are given challenges that are beyond their ability to cope. And so they freeze in where they know they can function.
Yes. But how could we help those kinds of people? And this question now is coming simply from the point of view that when we were in Ireland a few years ago, they released some statistics that the suicide rate in Ireland was going off the charts. And it seemed to be only in Ireland at the time, and that was puzzling. It was very puzzling. But since we've discovered that the United States actually were withholding statistics which showed exactly the same trend. So it seems that lately, that trend has just gone off the charts too in the United States. So my question is around, how do we help those people to become aware of this potential growth to cope with life effectively. Cope with
Brain highways.
changes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I always say brain highways, don't I?
you do. Yeah.
This is a real problem, and it's a real problem within the groups that I associate with. I've had 2 people I knew moderately well commit suicide this last year.
Yes.
One was a public speaker who was extremely popular and well received here in Bend, and had literally hundreds of people who knew her and respected her, and she committed suicide. Well, in her particular case, she had had a hideous childhood. So from the ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences test, she was kind of on the track for that kind of life from the beginning. But what happened to her was when she was, let's say, age 13, where people say something like, "I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm gonna be positive no matter what." Well, she locked in on that, and she was absolutely positive no matter what, except when she wasn't. But the other person was a guy, and he had had a close friend who broke his neck, and was going to be quadriplegic and elected to die.
Right.
And here in Oregon, you're allowed to do that if you're in a hopeless situation. Well, I think that really bothered my friend a lot.
Yeah.
And then he just decided a month before he set a date. He didn't tell anybody about it. He was friendly and cheerful. I could show you videos of him. The friendliest guy you'd ever want to meet.
Wow.
And didn't seem to have any serious problem. He was having a little bit of economic problem, but that's no reason.
Gosh.
Everybody's having economic problems.
Yeah.
I think you don't know what sets somebody off, though. I mean, so many people, too, just all of a sudden one day they seem to be having a great life, and all of a sudden one day they just take themselves out.
I could read you a 2-page letter he sent to me apologizing for doing it.
Yeah. Now here's the thing. We started off this series speaking with Charles Scamahorn, and it was quite heavy. We were talking about the Second World War, the atomic bomb, all that kind of thing, and we raised it to fantastic heights in terms of the human potential and all of that. And I don't want to end the session on a negative when we speak about suicide either. But I do want to say also, we've had people say to us from time to time, "Oh, don't use that word, commit suicide. That's not politically correct." I don't know what is the politically correct word, so forgive us if that offends some people. It's not our intention. We're aware that this is going on, and we would certainly be desirous of resolving this kind of despair for people. And hopefully what Charles has talked about there, the stages of the evolution, stages of development of man, might go some way towards raising the bar for everybody and helping everybody, and hopefully we won't see things end in a world war or nuclear annihilation. But I'm going to finish on this though, and we do have to bring things to a close. Aingeal Rose raised something very interesting with me on our way over here to speak to you, Charles. And she said, "I wonder what is the future of nuclear, or what even does nuclear mean?" And it struck me very strongly when you listen closely to the sound of the word, not what it means to us as children, learning about atomic energy. The sound of new, clear sounds like new, clear energy. Mm-hmm. New, clear, clean energy.
Oh, sounds nice.
Yeah, doesn't it? And all it takes is just that shift in
pronunciation.
Shift in pronunciation.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I found that very appealing. It gave me a whole new possibility for nuclear
How could
energy.
it be that I've been associated with this all my life and I've never heard it pronounced that way?
I didn't either.
Nuclear energy.
Yes.
But this again goes down to what it's used for.
Yes.
Okay, because if that type of an energy, for it to be nuclear,
Yes.
okay, it's obviously not used to destroy humanity.
That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
The same thing with any technology
Mm-hmm.
or any energy that's available. Well, the truth is we don't really know the unlimited power of this universe.
That's right.
Okay? Obviously, if we look at creation, we know
Yes.
something quite powerful is happening.
But
okay?
I imagine it would be of the order of nuclear,
Yes.
as opposed to
Yeah, we,
you know,
what
old
we
dirty stuff.
Yeah.
what we
coal.
decided is we would go into the records at some point and ask source
And
its
ask
definition of
Yes.
that word, because it would be real
It
interesting
would be interesting
to see what
Yeah.
comes out of that. But yes, it's a whole new perception.
So-
Let me just say, it's kind of like radiation. When somebody explained to us
That's right.
that radiation, all radiation is an energy that's vibrating at a much higher frequency than the human cell
That's
is
right.
able for. But if you were developed in a way, there's times when radiation helps people,
Yes.
helps them mutate and move in a better
Yes.
direction, and sometimes where it destroys. So, you know, I think we need to kind of leave with this perception where the word itself and what it is isn't necessarily how it's used.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's how it's used that really determines,
Yeah.
you know, what happens to our planet in the future
Yes.
and what we do with what we have available to us.
Yes.
So, anyway, we would hope that the consciousness would keep maturing, as Charles says, because it is true that if you have people who are mostly stuck at the adolescent stage in their development, in their adulthood, we're always going to be seeing children, okay, use power to destroy.
Yeah.
And so we are acknowledging that the human has to mature. And all of us can look at those phases in ourselves. I mean, when you go into fear, you know, when we do the quantum jumping classes, you know, there's a thing in the papers we hand out where we talk about the different states of consciousness, alpha, beta, gamma. And they were saying how the reason we don't use more of our brain is because we're using it all up for emotional reactions. Okay, and if you weren't reactive in that way all the time, you'd have more of your brain energy available for higher states of awareness.
Yes.
So it makes the point.
Well, that's a beautiful note on which to finish.
Yeah.
Charles, would you just give us a one sentence, a quick close? Because for me, it's been an absolutely wonderful discussion that we've had.
And how to get to your blog and how people can
Yeah.
take a look at what you're posting.
Well, my online name is Probaway, Probaway. That's all you need to Google search me.
Okay.
And what?
Just bring us to a conclusion in terms of, you know, your.
Do you have anything to say?
Okay,
In other words,
yeah.
to end.
I would like to end on a hope. No, not a hopeful. I don't like the word hope. It leads to too many distractions. I would like to end with the idea that it is possible for humanity to, become gods. To become gods. We have a route to do that. When we talk about developing the maturity,
Yeah.
you know, infant, child, adolescent, adult,
Yes.
mature, sage, and
Aurora.
all of us can do that.
Yeah.
I think any normal human being can go through all of those stages, but we need, at this moment, a little bit of help and guidance to show you how to do that.
Yeah.
It's when you're in your emotionally positive frame as a baby crawling along. Hey, look, I can crawl, and you're looking around, and then you do things, and then you stand up and do things. It's when you're a child, you know, having all the problems that child have, you know, that they can look and say, oh, I don't have to be doing this. I can think of myself as strong and positive, you know, like an adolescent. And if you can get to that positive emotional state, you can move on to being an adult, doing worthwhile, productive things. And then as you become a mature person, you can do productive, helpful, warm things for your family and your community. And when you become a sage, you can figure out ways for all humanity to progress, to be better for all things. And when you become an Aurora, I don't know, because I'm not there.
Well, we'll aspire to that.
We'll aspire to that.
Yeah.
But it would be a godlike state to be able to get there.
It would indeed, yeah.
And he is right. It is the potential of every human, and indeed at this stage it's necessary to progress that way.
Yeah.
Okay, that has been a wonderful conversation. We thank you, Charles Scamahorn. Probaway, search for that on Google, and you will find his blog very much worthwhile a read. And Aingeal Rose, thank you for your input and participation.
Yeah.
We have something new and surprising again for you next week. Until then, from myself, Ahonu and Aingeal Rose, blessings.
You have been listening to Aingeal Rose and Ahonu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.